Blog Talk Radio.
Oh, it's time to get real. Oh, yeah. It's a new experience. Reality, spirituality. Yeah, keep your ears open for this one. Reality, spirituality. You got a question for RLN? Reality, spirituality. Yeah, it's time to get some answers, baby. Reality, spirituality. Oh, now we get real. Get down, reality, spirituality. Yeah, you gonna feel good now. Get real good. Now, that's what I'm talking about. Time to get real.
And guess what? Hold on. Okay, we're gonna do that again.
Yeah. Oh, it's time to get real. Oh, yeah. It's a new experience. Reality, spirituality. Yeah, keep your ears open for this one. Reality, spirituality. You got a question for RLN? Reality, spirituality. Yeah, it's time to get some answers, baby. Reality, spirituality. Oh, now we get real. Yeah, time to get down. Yeah, you gonna feel good now. Get real good. Now, that's what I'm talking about. Time to get real.
Well, let's try it one more time. We are live with my guest, John Davis. But before I introduce him, let me just share, especially we're getting a lot more listeners, a lot more followers. Welcome to Reality Spirituality. I'm your host, Global Happiness Specialist. What? You heard me. Global Happiness Specialist, Inner Peace Practitioner, but most importantly, a student, ongoing student. And when I say happiness, I'm talking about, is it possible to experience more happiness along the journey? One of the studies that I like to cite, and you can Google this. It was done by a hospice nurse in Australia. Her name is Bronnie Ware, Bronnie Ware, and she interviewed. She asked her patients, these people had days to live, weeks to live, months to live, and she asked them what were their 5 biggest regrets. And so these 5 regrets kept coming up over and over and over again, and she wrote a book about it. And I always like to share, because if you ask me, and you haven't, but if you ask me that, this thing called happiness, and let me be very clear, it's not about something happens, and now I'm feeling good. It is an internal foundation rooted in contentment, rooted in the energy of peace, rooted in energy of satisfaction, rooted in the energy of surrendering to whatever I find on the journey. So the 5 most common regrets of the dying. John, would you like to know?
Absolutely.
Yes. Number 1, I wish I would have pursued my dreams and aspirations and not the life others expected of me. Number 2, I wish I didn't work so hard. Thank goodness I don't have that issue. Number 3, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings and speak my mind. Number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Now, sometimes you just outgrow people. Nothing wrong with them, nothing wrong with you, nothing wrong with me. It's just a season, and it's just time to move on. And the last one is, I wish I would have let myself be happier. And let me give you my definition. My definition of happiness is the ability to vibrate a personal energy of peace and contentment regardless of what happens. And regardless of what doesn't happen. Just, can you imagine we're all traveling, we're all on the same journey, just being able to live in a state of neutrality without judging. This is good, this is bad. Well, all of the judging good and bad is all comes down to the program, which reminds me, thanks for asking, John.
You are welcome.
The book that is out now is called Program. Let me take it out of the plastic. Program for Unhappiness. And in this book, I list 56 program behaviors that have been proven to subtract from happiness. That's a lot. Program for Unhappiness. I'm holding it up right here. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Lulu. Anyway, I digress. And so we're listening on different platforms today on Noom Vibe, also on StreamYard. We're live on YouTube. Just go to my YouTube channel. And if you want to speak with John directly, the number to call in is area code 646-564-9619. Again, area code 646-564-9619. And let me just share, John was on the show with me a couple of weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, and guess who didn't press go live? So nothing was recorded. Well, it was recorded. We have the audio, but there was no video. And so John was gracious enough to come on the show again and share. And I had so many emails and so many comments that wanted you back. So I really appreciate you coming back, and we have people online. And if you want to ask, let's see, we have a chat, YouTube, StreamYard. You can chat, ask your questions, or again, call in live, and the number is 646-564-9619. Again, 646-564-9619, and press the number 1. I see that I have a few people in the queue, area codes, and I will get back to you in a minute. But John, thank you again for graciously coming back in such a short period of time. And can you share with the audience just who the hell and how did you? Well, when I say the beginning, but I really wanted to kind of, because this event, this near-death experience happened to you when you were in your 20s, correct?
Yeah, I was 21 when the whole thing happened.
21. Okay, so I would like to know, since then, just before we get into your story, since then, how has this experience changed you concretely? How has it changed your life? What have you implemented?
Sure, absolutely. It's a great question. When I was 21, my whole background really was Catholicism. My dad was a Catholic, and we went to church all the time, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, and also on Sunday. So my whole life was built around religion. When I had my near-death experience, it absolutely changed my entire perspective. I realized that religion doesn't have all the answers about God and the afterlife, and religion, I think, was invented by mankind, not by God. When I was having my NDE, I didn't have any concept that there was religion on the other side. It's like religion only exists here on earth as humankind's way to understand God. So for me, the biggest change was leaving a sense of being religionistic and being more on the spiritual path. I kind of got the sense that there's no one religion that leads to God, but all religions have some truth. And whatever one brings you closer to God is the right one for you.
I love that you mentioned that. You said in the religions that bring you to God. It's also, nobody asked me, but it's a program, man-made program to control other people and their thoughts. But that's not this show. But I really appreciate you bringing that out, and it feels like you're saying that there's nothing wrong with having a religion, but just it doesn't offer all of the truth.
That's what I believe, exactly. Yep. I think all religions can bring people closer to God, but I don't believe there's only one religion. I think they can all lead to God.
I love that. Okay, without further ado, let's dive right in.
Sure. Well, I want to set the stage so your audience kind of has an idea of how my experience unfolds. You know how a lot of times when you hear about a near-death experience, you hear about the person who there's some kind of an accident or they have some kind of a problem in surgery and they die. And then they find themselves floating above their body. They're looking down. They can see everything going on. And then they become aware of a tunnel. And at the end of the tunnel, there's this white light. Well, as the person begins going down the tunnel, they're almost always met by someone who passed before them. Maybe a parent, a grandparent, a friend, someone that they know who tells them, it's not your time, you have to go back. So we've never known what happens when a person goes into that light or what the light is. Well, my experience starts on the other side of that white light. So when I had my near-death experience, they somehow, I didn't have to go through the tunnel. I didn't do any of that. I just started on the other side. So that's where my story starts. So I'll give you the background. My dad was in sales, and he won a sales contest. And part of what he won were these two mopeds, or what we would call scooters now. And we used to ride these all over the neighborhood. Well, one day I was out riding, and I had an accident, and I slammed into a tree. And the way I landed, I tore the tendon off my right hand and needed to go in to have surgery to have them reattached. Well, I was only 21. I had never spent really much of any time at all in a hospital, and I never had surgery before. So I had no idea what to expect. So my mom drives me down to the hospital. We go in the operating room, and when they started to give me the anesthetic, I had a horrible reaction, and it stopped my heart. And I was actually dead for 7 minutes. And my whole story took place in Earth time in 7 minutes. But if anybody would have asked me, it felt like I was on the other side or in heaven or the afterlife. It felt like I was there for an hour or two. I had a hugely long experience. And the remarkable thing about it is, even though it happened so many years ago, I remember it like it happened yesterday. And people have asked me so many times, did I have any kind of a gift after having my near-death experience? Because you hear a lot of people who say they have gifts after they have their experience. Well, I didn't have anything that I was aware of, but the one thing I think God gave me was the ability to recall every single thing that I saw, everything people told me, everything I experienced. And I think that was a gift because ordinarily, I can't remember what I had for dinner last night. I had a terrible memory, but that experience is so crystal clear.
May I
so here's,
jump in just for a second, because I just want to, this is really, it just hit me. I just felt chills in my body when you said on Earth, it was 7 minutes, you died for 7 minutes, Earth time. And then on the other side, it felt an hour, 2 hours. And that's even just coming up with the concept. So this whole program sense of time in the first place, if humans are stuck, this is 5 minutes, a minute. All I'm saying is to even expand, because the programming is, I'm wasting time, we're wasting time. There's no such thing. But keep going.
Sure. Yeah, I found that to be true. The other side, they don't have time like we do. It's a very different concept for them. So here's what happens. So they're giving me the anesthesia. My heart stops. For the very next second, I opened up my eyes, and I was standing in the most beautiful building I ever seen. It was this huge, long corridor building. It was so long, I could not even see the end of it. And my very first thought was, I had no idea the hospital was this large. Because during my NDE experience, I had no idea that I had died. I didn't know I died until after I came back. So what happened during this period is when I was standing in this building, in my left ear, I heard, "My name is Alan. I'm your spirit guide." Well, I had never heard that term before. There was nothing in 1987 that ever talked about NDEs or spirit guides, so I didn't know any of this. And what happened is all of us have spirit guides, and they help us plan our lifetime, and they are with us throughout our life. So what happened is, as this whole story unfolds, my guide is telling me everything that I'm seeing, so I'm able to share with the audience exactly the same things that he told me. So I was in this beautiful building, and on the right-hand side of me, as far down as I could see, were these tall, white marble columns, maybe 20 feet high, 20, 30 feet high, and they were about 6 feet apart, and they went all the way down as far as you could see. In the middle where I was standing were marble tables, just like a kitchen table, and there were 4 marble benches on each side of these tables. And again, they went as far as you could see, and there were 2 people at every single one of these tables. And my guide told me that they are orientation counselors, and their job on the other side is to help people remember where they're from. So I'll get into more detail in just a second. To the left of me were, all I can think of, the best way to describe it is they were like doorways or tunnels that looked like they had been cut out of solid marble, just like a doorway, 90-degree angle. And they was black. It was like looking into space. You could see these tunnels. And my guide told me that when we have a lifetime on Earth and we pass, it's our time to pass from that life, we take these tunnels back to the other side. So when I mentioned earlier that we never knew what happened on the other side of the white light, what happens is when a person goes into the light from the tunnel, they end up in the orientation center. So my guide said, look at the next tunnel. So I looked up at the next tunnel, and there was a man coming through. He was an elderly gentleman, and he had his right hand covering his chest, like he had chest pain. And my guide said, he just died from a heart attack. Well, the woman that was sitting next to her in the table closest to that tunnel, she stood up. She walked over to him. She took his hand in hers, and she led him back to the table, and they sat down. And my guide said, the orientation counselors, everybody has them. Whenever somebody passes and they go through the tunnel, they're met by an orientation counselor. And my guide said that the reason that they're there is to help people remember where they're from. Because when we come into a lifetime, we leave the other side, we come into a lifetime, and I don't understand how this works, but we forget where we're from. Very few people remember that we're from the other side. So Earth is not our home. It's just a place we go to learn. The other side is our real home. But the orientation counselors, they're there to help people remember that you just finished a lifetime, you're back home now. And my guide said to watch him. He told me to watch the gentleman that she was talking to. As she was talking, I could not hear what she was saying because I was too far away. I could just see him. And my guide said to watch him. Well, as I watched him, he began to change. And he changed from a man who was elderly to a man in his 30s. And it took about maybe 15, 30 seconds for this whole transformation to occur. And what was happening is he was remembering where he was from. They remember that, okay, this is where I'm from the other side, or heaven, Atlas, whatever you want to call it. I just finished a lifetime here on Earth, and now I'm back home again. Well, as soon as she was done talking to him, and he had all of his memory back, he stood up, and he walked off to the right. Oh, I want to say, before I forget, I want to say something for your audience. My guide showed me all these different buildings that he took me to first, and then he took me to the inside. So that's kind of how my story, how I'm able to tell this about these buildings. For your audience, they can do a Google search and look up, there's a temple in the country of Turkey, and it's called Temple of Artemis, Artemis, Artemis. And it's a beautiful marble building, and it looks exactly like what the orientation center looks like. So they can Google that and see what it looks like for themselves. So this man stood up. He walked off to the right, and he walked down 3 steps between these columns into what I call the gardens. I don't know if the other side calls them that, but that's just what it looked like to me. These beautiful, absolutely gorgeous manicured gardens with the greenest grass you've ever seen, and flowers and plants and trees. We have nothing like that here on Earth. And there were all these people there, hundreds of people. And my guide said, this is where you have your orientation. So I think as this whole process unfolded, I think my guide was showing me that this is what happens when a person finishes their life. They go into a tunnel, they go through the white light, they end up in the orientation center, and then they go into these gardens where they meet all the people that passed before them. And my guide said that the reason this reunion exists is because it's a really big deal when you have an Earth life. And the reason is, Earth is apparently the hardest of all the planets. And there are many, many souls who don't want to come here because it is so hard. So when you finish
it's hell.
Yeah, that's what I believe too. Absolutely. So when people actually have the courage to come here, they've already won half the battle just coming here. So when they finish, everybody that they knew on the other side, their friends, relatives, plus all the people that have passed before them, are all waiting there to congratulate you. And people were smiling, hugging this gentleman, applauding. It was like a huge reunion. And everyone was there to greet them, or to greet him, because it is such a really big deal. People don't think that they look so badly about themselves sometimes here on Earth, and they don't realize what an extraordinary accomplishment it is just to come here. It's a huge big deal. So we had the reunion, and this is where my whole NDE really started taking off quickly. My guide took me to a building, and the buildings that he showed me, they are so large. We have nothing like them here on Earth. The only thing I can think of that matches how large these were the pyramid in Egypt. But these buildings were even larger than that. And the place that he took me to on the other side was just one small area of the other side. And it felt like I was on a college campus. You know how college campuses have their history building, you've got your English building, you've got your science buildings, all these different places, but they're all in one central location. That's what it felt like when I was having my experience. And all the buildings in this one area where I was seemed to have the motif of Greek or Roman architecture, beautiful white marble columns. And so the building he took me to was a huge, long, rectangular building. And it had columns, white marble columns, all around the outside. And then he took me to the inside. And one of the rooms that he took me to was a round room, just a big circular room. And it had these movie screens on the top. And they were all around in a circle. And he told me that we're going to have your life review. And I found out that every time somebody comes back from an Earth lifetime, they have a life review. And the whole reason for the life review is to see how you did. Because all of us leave the other side with specific purposes. We have goals that we come into life for. And when you have a life review, it allows you to see if you accomplished what you set out to accomplish. Well, all of a sudden, every one of these screens turned on. And it was like watching a movie. There must have been 15 or 20 of these screens all above my head. And every screen had a different episode of my life playing. It was like watching a movie about my life. One screen was me as a little toddler. One screen was me in my first day to kindergarten. Another screen was me in elementary school. It had all these different screens around there with all these different episodes of my life. And what was so interesting is that the things that we think are absolutely meaningless mean a lot to the other side. And one of the things that they were playing was me in elementary school. And there was a boy in our class, his name was Troy, and he had some kind of a disability, and he had to walk with crutches. Well, one day we were out at recess, and Troy failed, and we went over and picked him up and helped dust him off and picked him up. Well, I thought nothing of that. It was no big deal. Anybody would have done that. Well, one of these screens was playing that episode, and it was a big deal because they show you how you made somebody else feel. And the other thing about that is it shows the good things that you did, but you also have the opportunity, and this is where the learning comes in. The whole reason we have lifetimes is to learn and to grow. And one of the things that happens in a life review is if you hurt somebody, you actually feel what that person felt. So one of the best ways for us to learn is to learn about how other people felt from our experiences, how we treated them. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm listening to you, and I'm hearing what you're saying, and my perspective is that, yes, I'm here to experience, and however I respond, react to someone else, they were supposed to experience that, and I was supposed to say it. In other words, it's more of an experience without a judgment of something is good and or bad.
Exactly. In fact, there is no judgment.
Yes. And so my thing is all of this is just an experience, and the reason that I can come up with why it is so hard, and I'm just getting chills, is because I'm just going to speak for myself. I forget who I am. I'm not this Rebecca L. Norrington. I'm not this person. I'm not this identity with the gender and the culture and all of that. I'm more than that. And so when I forget and I identify with my humanness, yeah, this is a hard experience. But that's why when I talk about programs, it is the programming that causes one of the causes of to forget. But when I do remember who I am presence, as opposed to a person. Yeah, I can feel every cell in my body relax.
Exactly. I want to touch on something you said a minute ago about judgment. And being raised Catholic, you're always told about the final judgment. What was so fascinating about this life review is that nobody judges you. The only person that goes with you, at least from my experience, is your guide. And they help you look at your life to see if you accomplished what you wanted to do. But there was nobody saying that you made a mistake, we're going to send you to hell. You made a mistake, you have to go back and redo it. None of that, there was no judgment.
And that's huge what you said, and that is one of the, just having a judgment is a program. We didn't pop out of the womb knowing how to judge. Judging is taught. But I just want to remind, the audience, and there's someone that's had their hand up for a while. Do you mind if I just go to them really quick and then we continue with the story? They've been very patient. And you can call in area code 646-564-9619. And then also, if you want to speak live on Noon, just ask to come up to the stage. And let me see if I can do this without messing everything up. Hold on just a second. It is area code. Oh, I have to be on this phone. One of these days I'm going to get a real studio. Let's see. It is, let me push this button, area code 954. You are live, and thank you for your patience.
Yes, thank you so much. What a great topic. In 2000, but actually 2002 it must have been. I had an STE, which is a spiritual transcendental experience. I was in between awake and asleep, and I was prompted to the other side somehow. I was not in, but rather more or less a spectator, somewhat in, somewhat out. It was this garden. It was the greenest grass I have ever seen. The flowers emanated of love. Everything was just, what I saw was just unbelievable. But even more unbelievable was how I felt. I have never felt so complete. I felt like I was just, completion. I didn't see anyone. There was no one there. And I was just in a state of consciousness. And I didn't see anything.
Now, I have a question for you.
A year later, my mom had passed away. And I believe, and I was told that this was a preparation for her passing. So that was my experience. My daughter also remembered before she came here after my mom passed away. She said, "Oh, don't worry, Mom." She described the marble columns. She told me how there was a movie theater with red seats, and we actually pick our own, features and faces and stuff like that. She told me how it's done. I mean, it was unbelievable.
So, I have a question for you, though, if you don't mind sharing. How did that experience affect you? How has it affected your life? And I mean, are you able to be more peaceful? Are you able to let things go?
Yeah, because I am so much more peaceful because I know this is not our home. I didn't want to leave. I was screaming. I mean, I just didn't want to go. This is not our home. This is just a school that we learn certain lessons. And, when it's time to go home, we go home, and home is just a beautiful, I didn't want to leave this state of consciousness. And I just, when I think about it, I still get these like sickness for it, because it was just love. It's really just about love, loving yourself.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing that, and it's the same experience. This feeling, it's not our home, and I think that's really the lesson here. That's really the teaching. That's really what this is not our home. So thank you for that. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you holding for so long. Okay, John, let's go.
Yeah, I'll touch on that for just a second, too. What your caller just said is, all of my life, I had this feeling that something was missing. There had to be something more to all of this life that we're experiencing. And when I had my NDE, I experienced exactly what that caller just said about feeling like this is home. This is where we're from. We're not from Earth. We're just having an experience, learning and developing and growing, but it's not our home. And that's something that I definitely can relate to from what she just said. Mm-hmm. So that was the first building he showed me, was this life review opportunity that we have to review our lifetimes. The next place he took me to, again, was another huge rectangular building, again with columns all along the outside. And he took me in, and he took me to a room that looked like what we would say is a modern-day movie theater. And it had a movie screen up at the front of the room. And this is the part of my NDE that I had a hard time with, because usually I am really skeptical. I don't know if it was because I was raised Catholic, but I was the most skeptical person. Even after I had my own NDE, I was still skeptical. But this part made me question a lot of things. He took me to this building to show me that past lifetimes are real. And I didn't believe that at first. But then he explained to me that at creation, we have been around for a really long time, billions of years, and people can have as many lifetimes as they want to. This is not the only lifetime that people have. And as a caveat to that, people aren't forced to have a lifetime. It is strictly up to them if they want to come in to learn something. And the reason that we come here to learn is because we learn the best when we go through something difficult. On the other side, there's no conflict. There's nothing really to work through. It's a perfect paradise. There's no war. There's no starvation. There's no disease. There's no
contrast.
Yeah, exactly. And we can still learn on the other side, but it's about experiential learning here on Earth. And I always like to tell people what it feels like is trying to describe to somebody what it's like to ride a bike for the first time. You can tell somebody on the other side, this is what it feels like to ride a bike. But until they actually do it, they don't know what it feels like. And that's one of the primary reasons we come here, is to experience difficult things, because those are the things that make us grow the most. And that's why we're here. So that was I'm back in the past life area. Well, he showed me 3 different lifetimes. And it was like a movie turned on, just like in the life review.
Your lifetime, your 3 lifetimes?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yep, 3 of mine. In the first one, the screen comes on, and I'm a monk. And I have a shaved head, and I'm wearing a red gown or a robe, and I'm in a monastery. And my job in that lifetime was to teach little kids about becoming a monk and living in a monastery. And it was interesting because as I was watching this, I knew whereabouts this lifetime occurred. And it was somewhere in Southeast Asia in a monastery. And then that one disappeared. The next lifetime came on, and I was a shoe peddler. And I had a wheelbarrow full of shoes. And my job in that life was to repair people's shoes who lived in that village. And what I remember so distinctly is that I was pushing this wheelbarrow on a cobblestone road. And this life had taken place somewhere in Eastern Europe. And then that one disappeared. Then the last one showed up, and it was me as a fisherman. And I was standing in a kind of a little raggedy old boat, and I had fishing nets, and I was tossing them into the water to catch fish. That was part of my job in the village that I was living in, was to catch fish for our diets. And that was the lifetime that occurred somewhere in the Middle East. And this was so difficult, the whole idea of past lifetimes, that after I had my NDE, 2 months later, I wanted to see a therapist, because I had heard that they can actually help you review other lifetimes. And I wanted to see, this is a skeptical part of me, I wanted to see if I could see other lifetimes. And sure enough, I did. I saw 3 separate lifetimes. So I knew that what I had seen, what my guide had showed me, was really true. We do have many, many lifetimes if we want to. So I thought that was extraordinary.
That's fascinating.
Isn't it though?
And so do you have anything right now for shoes? I mean, do you have anything that you carry over into this lifetime from the past? Do you know? Are you conscious of that, or not really? Totally different lifetime.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never really thought about that very much.
Well, think about it. That's a great question, don't you think?
Yeah, it is a good question. Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Very good question. Well, the next place he took me to was a beautiful, again, absolutely gigantic, round building. The whole thing was round, and it had marble columns all around the circumference of this building. And I remember it had a really huge, big dome on it, a big dome ceiling. And the only building that I could have ever seen that looked kind of what this building looked like was in Rome, what they call the Roman Pantheon. And it had the big dome on top. That's what this building looked like. So my guide took me to the inside, and he led me up to a marble table, maybe about the size of an average kitchen table. And on the table, there was a scroll, a wrapped up scroll, and it looked like Have you ever seen those Egyptian papyrus scrolls? It kind of looked like that. It was rolled up, and it had a blue ribbon around it. So I picked it up, and I took the ribbon off, and I unfolded the scroll on the table. And my immediate response to this was, wow, this looks like calligraphy writing. It was all full of writing, all in black lettering. And do you remember as a kid, did you ever have a calligraphy class in elementary school where you have that ink pen, you dip it in the ink well, and you write out? That's what this writing looks like. And the reason my guide took me here to show me this scroll was to let me know and to tell people that our lifetimes we are planned ahead of time. We plan the major events of our life. Things like what country are we going to live in? What language are we going to learn? Who our parents are going to be? What kind of careers are we going to have? Are we going to have kids? Are we going to go to college? And all these major things get planned into our lifetime. And none of our lives are accidents. Well, as I went to try to read the scroll, I wanted to see what I had written. It folded up, and I wasn't able to see anything I had written. And I think the reason was because if I had learned ahead of time what I was supposed to experience, I may have changed the outcome. So he just wanted me to see that we do plan our lives, that none of us are accidents. It's not some random accident. And the best thing I thought of in terms of analogy was kind of like what a lot of us do at the end of every year. We start to write up New Year's resolutions. And that's kind of like what this scroll was all about. You plan your lifetime. Well, right about then, I looked to my right, and there was this huge wall. It could have been miles long, and it was full of scrolls. All of these scrolls all the way down this wall. And what they were the scrolls of everybody who had a lifetime on Earth during that time period, where we're actually having a lifetime. So when you finish your life, you go back to this building and you look at your scroll to see if you accomplished everything you set out to accomplish. Well, right about then, I looked to my left, and there was this huge, sprawling window. And this is the first time that I saw other people. And there was a walkway outside this building, and there were all kinds of people walking back and forth. And the best way I can describe it is like if you go to a big city and you're there and you're outside at lunchtime and you see all these people moving back and forth, going different places, that's what it looked like. So wherever my guide took me to during my experience, it was a really busy area full of activity and people. And people have asked me, well, what do we look like over there? And we look just like we do. We look just like us. And I always think of in the Bible, the book of Genesis, where it says we were made in the image and likeness of God. And our bodies here on earth are poor replicas of what our bodies are like on the other side. On the other side, our bodies are perfect. They don't get sick, they don't age, they don't get injured. That's only here on earth. And everybody has a different appearance. Some people are taller, some people are shorter. Every ethnicity, every race was represented there. And people have their own personalities, just like we do here, and they all look different. So that was something that was really neat to see. And on the other side of this walkway was, to this day, I've never seen anything as beautiful as what I saw. There was a lake, and it was a round lake outside this beautiful dome building. And it was the water was so still, it looked like glass. And it was so clear, I could see the bottom of the lake. And all around this lake were these beautiful weeping willow trees. Those are the kind of trees that have their branches that fall over and their leaves. Well, all of these leaves were sitting on the surface of the lake. And this is when my guide told me that everything that's beautiful on earth is also on the other side. Things like rivers and lakes and oceans and mountains, all of nature that people love is on the other side. And he also explained to me that everything that you love to do here on earth, you can do on the other side. If you want to go hiking in the woods, if you want to paint, you can do that. If you want to go to classes or lectures or music festivals or just visit with friends and family. You can do that too. But he made a point to tell me that everything you love here on earth, you can do on the other side. And before I forget, the last place he took me to in this dome building was this huge library. Everything was huge over there. And what made this library unique is that all the books were the same. They looked like Encyclopedia Britannicas. And he took me up to a book, and there was gold lettering on it. And the lettering didn't go horizontal. It went vertical. And it was in gold white lettering. And it said N-I-N-A, Nina. And my guide explained to me that Nina is my soulmate. And on the other side, everybody has one of these books. And the book is of your soulmate. And he explained to me that at creation, God created all of us with the perfect mate. And on the other side, you will always have that perfect mate with you, kind of like what you have when you're married here on earth. And people have asked me, do you know, does the soulmate come into a lifetime with you? And I didn't think to ask my guide that. I didn't even think of it. But my impression was that, yes, they can, but they don't always do that. And the reason is because when you come into an earth life, one of the best ways that we learn about ourselves is having relationships. And if you had your perfect mate with you all the way through your earth life, you may not learn that much.
Well, so let me jump in. I do have a soulmate in this lifetime, and I'm going to say when we did meet, and it is not a romantic, but it is definitely, I call it a soulmate. And it's funny because I remember as a little girl, I want a soulmate, and just had no concept of what that was. But to me, you meet someone and you grow together. So even at our first meeting, we were totally different. And the relationship is just a relationship of growth and acceptance, and hang on for the ride.
Yes, that's exactly how I think of it too. It's all about growth and growing and developing.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with, well, we have the same things in common, we like the same restaurants, we like the same movies. None of that. It is just it's the growth, the challenge. It is a challenge in my perspective to grow. It's painful. I'm not going to say painful, but it is a direct stabbing, and it isn't peaceful. It isn't peaceful, but it grows into that.
And people have always asked me, they say, well, why do we always like to learn? Do we always have to study and learn and grow? And the answer is that what was explained to me was at creation, I think God created all of us with kind of this DNA to want to learn. Because I think all of us love the idea of learning new things. I've never met anybody who didn't like to learn something new. And I think that's part of the reason, too, why we leave the other side and come into lifetime. Because we just enjoy the whole process of learning and growing.
I'm going to throw in another word, expanding. Just expanding this consciousness.
Yes.
Constant. And yeah, it is more than a notion. I have a question. So what is your perspective? What is your opinion on the people that you've met that are open to the story, that are open to believing it, to understanding it? Have you had any pushback? They're crazy, or a lunatic, you need to be locked up. What is the percentage? And have people that are maybe a little ticked off or angry, or lock his ass up?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I definitely had that. I would say it's probably 10%. The vast majority has been really supportive because people just know in their heart and mind that there's something, this can't be all there is.
People can feel the truth. The truth can be felt.
There are the 10% of people that don't believe me. I'm totally okay with that. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I'm just sharing a story that I think gives people hope. But a lot of people have said, well, how do you know that this wasn't some kind of dream? Did you just have a dream? And I tell people that there was a big difference between that experience and a dream for me, because normally, if I dream at night, I don't always remember my dreams. And if I do, I might remember them for 15 or 30 minutes after the dream, and then I totally forget about it. Well, my experience, I can't even describe how much better it is than what I can describe. I don't have the language or the words to describe how much better it really is than how I make it sound. And people will say to me, how can it be that good? And I tell them, it's so much to even describe. And there is so much that we all have to look forward to when our lifetime is finished. Mm-hmm. So we're here just to do the best we can to learn, but there is so much more to look forward to. So I would say it's only about maybe 10% of the people I talk with tell me that I must have made it up, or had to be some kind of a dream or a hallucination. Mm-hmm. And I'm fine with that. Everyone has their own opinion, and that's fine. And I'm just trying to share my story to uplift people and give them hope.
Yeah, and that's what I'm feeling from you. We're going to go really quickly because Jay has the question. You remember Jay. Hold on a second, Jay. Let me pull you up. Jay, you are live. Round 2, part 2. John Davis. Hi, Jay. What's up?
Hey, Rebecca. Hey, thanks for taking my call, Rebecca. And hey, John. Nice to talk to you again.
I can't hear him.
Oh, you can't hear him?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second.
Hello?
Let's see. I can hear you, Jay. Hold on a second, Jay. Let me put this down. How can I? Okay. Okay, talk now, Jay.
Hello? Hey, John?
Can you hear John?
I can hear him a little bit.
Hello?
Talk? Yeah, talk, Jay, talk.
Okay. My question, John, is regarding, I've been watching on YouTube regarding people who have near-death experiences, and it's always my amazement. They're atheists or people who don't believe in the other side, but when they come back, the universe or the other side tells them to come back and say, talk to other people what the other side is like. So I just wondered why that is. I don't know why that is so common.
So your question is, why do people that hear that people that are atheists, you said, that hear the stories about going to the other side, and why that's so common? Is that your question? Yeah.
Just wondered, they don't believe on anything or like that, and then they have a near-death experience, and then it changes their life around.
So your question. Can you hear me, John? Can you hear me good? Okay. So your question is mostly about atheists. Those atheists, they're people too. The atheists and really wanting. So let me ask you, wanting them to believe, or wanting them to see the truth, or wanting them to see the light. Is that or lack of acceptance of an atheist? Am I correct?
It's just common in what I'm watching the YouTube videos.
Okay.
They're
just
perfect. Yeah.
Okay, that's a really good question, because it's something that I struggled with before I had my NDE, and it's something that I've met so many people that have struggled with atheism also. And in my experience, it's not that atheists don't want to believe in something more. I think a lot of them, if you look at their histories, a lot of them were raised with a very staunch religious background. And I think if you look at religion in terms of dogma and rules and regulations, and you're going to be judged, and all of these things happen, I think a lot of people don't believe that. And I think that's what the whole atheism is a result of, is the belief that everything there's a vengeful God, there's a real hell, you're going to be punished if you don't live a correct life, if you don't believe this way. And in my experience, that's where atheism comes from. Not that they don't want to believe, they just have a hard time believing in all the dogma. And that's why I think of myself as being 50% Christian, because I believe in Jesus. I believe in what he came here to teach about love, compassion, non-judgment, accepting people. And I believe all that. I just have a really hard time believing in the dogma and all the rules of religion. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, it does, because it reminds you of what's going on, what you were saying in regards to why humans fear God, like being happy too. I mean, we're in fear. It's like it just kind of it's kind of amazing how we actually get hooked onto the dogma of God is more powerful than us, and then we kind of like don't become ourselves on this earth plane. Is that a question I can ask, John?
Yeah, that's a great comment. It's so specific. So you know the interesting thing, and this is for me. I practice not trying to understand any of this. Not trying to understand any of it. It's a lot. It's my little pea brain. It's so vast. I mean, I can't even comprehend the Milky Way, much less billions of galaxies. And so just being okay with not understanding, not knowing, and nobody knows it. I don't think I've ever shared this, but guess what? I went through a stage in my life where I was an atheist too. Yes, when I grew up in a very, very strict, you got to go to Bible school every Monday and church, and there was a period of years, and I found a good talk show host that I thought was really smart, and he was an atheist. I said, yeah, atheists unite. And it was part of my evolution. And so just to be open to everything is always evolving, always changing. And that's just the way this universe works.
Yeah, and something I want to add to that, too, is I think a lot of people who claim to be atheists have a difficult time conceiving of a fearful, vengeful God. So we're supposed to fear God. And it's like, let's just have kids. You don't ever want your kids to fear you. You want your kids to love you. And that's what God is about also. None of it is judgment, it's fear. It's just part of religion. It's not part of how God really feels about us. There is no judgment that I felt at all that comes from God.
I love that. Any other comments, Jay? What a thought-provoking comments and questions. I always appreciate you.
Well, one thing I'm being bothered right now is like they always say, you're God, and I just don't understand why people say that. Could you comment on that, John? Because it just bothers me.
Why did it say your God? Okay, so this is it. You know what, Jay? Listen, we've been around each other 20 years now, 15 years.
Something like that.
Stay out of these other people's business. Let these people go. If it bothers you, it's nothing to do with them, and it's something to do with why does it bother you? Why does the difference? Why do people not believing what you believe bothers you? Sounds like mirror work to me.
Right. Well, what kind of? Because they always say you're God, and go like, well, there's only one, isn't there? So just.
Well, that's okay if they say you're God. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like,
okay.
Is my God different from your God, or your God? It's like
It doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It always comes back to, okay, so my buttons are pushed. Why are my buttons pushed? That's the homework assignment. You have homework, Jay. Okay, let's do this. Wow. Okay, let's get back to the story. Thank you so much, John, for your patience and also your contribution to that. Very important. I love that atheist detour.
Yeah, that was a great question. So thanks for Jay for bringing that up.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing that my guide showed me, I think was probably my favorite of everything that he took me to. The next building he took me to was different than the others. It wasn't marble. It was this huge, sprawling stadium. It looked like where you would go to watch a football game or a soccer game. It's a huge stadium. So he showed me the outside, and then we go on the inside. And the inside, I remember, was thousands of chairs, and all the lights were on. It was super bright inside this building. And where I was, my guide explained to me that I was in a planetarium. And I think a lot of your audience might remember when they were kids, we would go on field trips, and we would go to the planetarium. And it's the kind of building that has a rounded roof on the inside, and they can show you pictures of planets and stars and galaxies, things like that. Well, that's where I was. And as I was standing there was a gentleman behind me. And remember how we talked about earlier that everybody seems to have jobs on the other side? But they're not jobs like you have to go to pay your bills. You have a job on the other side because it's something you love to do, something you're really good at, and something you like to study. So people have kind of like vocations that they pursue on the other side. And the gentleman that was behind me, his job was to run the planetarium. That's what he loved to do. He loved astronomy and planets and stars and galaxies. And he started speaking to me, and he said, the first thing he said was, let's begin. And all of a sudden, all the lights went off, and it was pitch black. Well, I sat down and looked up at the ceiling, and he said, when you look at the stars, this is what you see. And what he was talking about was everybody on Earth at that time, with their level of knowledge and development, this is what they see when they look at the stars. And all of a sudden, our solar system began to show up. He started showing me pictures of Earth, then our sun, and then Jupiter and Saturn and Mars. All of our solar system showed up on the ceiling, and then it disappeared. And then he said, when we look at the stars, this is what we see. And he was talking about everybody on the other side with their level of knowledge and development. This is what they see. And all of a sudden, planet after planet after planet started showing up. First, there were dozens and hundreds and thousands and millions of planets. And he said, there is far more life in the universe than you can possibly imagine. And my guide took me here for two reasons. The first one, to tell me that life is not the only inhabited planet. And the second reason he took me here was to show me that we can have lifetimes on multitudes of other planets. Earth is not the only one. And something that I want to explain to your audience to kind of give them an idea of scale about how significant this really was. And I was reading an article from an astronomer, and she was trying to explain to us, the layperson, how large the Milky Way galaxy is in comparison to the rest of the universe. And she said if we had a spaceship that could travel at the fastest speed that we know, which is light speed, or which is the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, it would take 99,000 years for that ship to get from one end of our galaxy to the other, just in our galaxy alone. And NASA has said that they have discovered now 285,000 different galaxies, and they estimate that there are billions and billions of galaxies in the universe. And she went on to say that just in the Milky Way alone, just in our galaxy, that they think there are 100 billion planets. And that, I can't even wrap my head around that. So on the other side, what's so fascinating to me is that what are these other civilizations like on different planets? So the potential for learning and growing really is unlimited, because Earth is not the only place we can go. And I've always believed that. I remember when I was a kid, I would watch Star Trek with Captain Kirk. And I remember thinking, that has to be real. There has to be other planets with life. Earth cannot be the only one. So I was thrilled that they showed me that part about the other side, and I think that was my favorite of the places he took me to.
Well, before Star Trek and Captain Kirk was lost in space.
Oh, yeah, I remember that,
yes, and there's really life on the other planets. I just remember them going to different planets and always having a problem with those people, with those things on the other planet. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. How can we how can I even think that this is good enough? One of the things that I practice is just being so open. All of this crap here on earth is just not even a speck, not even a grain of sand. And it's going to be over in the blink of an eye.
Exactly. Yep.
So remember who you are, people. Remember who you are. Awaken to who you are. Your presence. Having an experience. Yep. Keep going.
Yep. The next place he took me to was the largest of all the buildings he took me to. This one was a huge, sprawling building. It was so long, I couldn't see the end of it. But it didn't have columns on the sides. The only place that had columns were in front. And what this building looked like from the front was our Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. It had the triangular roof. It had the columns out front. It had all these steps leading up to it. So it showed me the outside, and then we went on the inside, and I knew immediately that this was a library, huge, sprawling library. And there was all kinds of people here. Some people were studying at tables. Some people were visiting. Some people were looking for books. And there were these bookshelves that were 20 or 30 feet high, and they were wooden bookshelves. And there were books everywhere. As far as you could see, there were books. And my guide explained to me that on the other side, knowledge and learning is a huge thing that everyone does over there. And this library is a place that you can go. And there's many, many libraries. This one, I got the sense, was the largest. And anything that you wanted to learn was there. If you wanted to learn about history or science or languages, music, anything, you could come to this library. And here's another favorite part about this building that my guide took me to. He took me to the left side, and on the left-hand side were all these, side by side were all of these study rooms. What we would think is a study room in a modern library today. They're about the size of a person's average living room. And he took me to one of these rooms, and he took me to one where there was a woman who was sitting with her back to me on a couch, and she had jet black hair that went all the way down to her waist, and she was wearing kind of a purplish kind of a tunic, and she was watching a screen, what we would call today, looked like a flat screen TV, and it was mounted on the wall. It was maybe 50 or 60 inches wide. It was one of those big flat screen TVs. And I remember thinking that we didn't have anything like that back in 1987. We had these big, bulky, thick TVs that you couldn't mount on a wall. So it was just extraordinary for me to see this video screen. And my guide said, look at what she's watching. There was something playing on the screen that she was watching. And as I got closer to it, I could see that she was watching a battle that was taking place with Native American Indians on horseback and the United States cavalry on horseback. And I thought that she was watching a movie. But my guide explained to me that she was watching living history. She was watching a battle that had taken place 200 years earlier during Earth's history between the Native American Plains tribes and the United States cavalry. And I remember thinking, how is it possible that she could be watching history? Because there were no video cameras back then. I don't even think we had regular cameras back then. How was that possible? And my guide said, everything gets recorded. And this is something that I can't explain how that happens. Because when I was in that life review building where I was watching all those screens of my life, I don't understand how that's possible. How are our lifetimes recorded? But they are. And it's just something to do with God. Our lifetimes are recorded. And she was watching that period of Earth's history that she was interested in between Native Americans and the United States cavalry. And it occurred to me that, I have always loved history. I'm a history buff. And what was so exciting for me about watching this was the chance you can go, if you didn't have a lifetime in a particular era of Earth's history that you're interested in, you can go to these rooms and you can watch history. And one of the things I I want to do when I get back is I want to watch D-Day, which is coming up in just a couple of days from now, anniversary of D-Day, June of 1944, when the Allies invaded France in Normandy. So I cannot wait to have the opportunity to go and look at history like this girl was doing. And I just thought that was such a fascinating part of my NDE to see that you can learn about history because it's all recorded.
It sounds like a place that has everything that you've ever wanted, plus more.
Absolutely. And it's just absolutely, it's a paradise, an absolute paradise.
That's the word. That's what I was looking for. I'm just checking my microphone. Of course, all of this is, geez.
So that was the library. And I'm almost done, so I'm getting close to being done.
You're good.
So the next place he took me to was the castle. And a castle just like you would see in medieval England or in France. This beautiful, sprawling stone castle. And he takes me to the inside, and the first thing I noticed was this beautiful red, sprawling carpet. And you felt like royalty when you walked in here. And the reason he took me here to this castle was to let me know that on the other side, there are many, many ways to learn. And if you wanted to learn about medieval Europe in castles, you could come to this part of the other side, and you could see what they lived in. So we walked in, and on both sides of these walls, there were these huge walls. And on the walls were life-size paintings. And they were of people that had lived in castles, like princes or kings or queens. And they had a life-size painting of what that person looked like, and also what they were wearing, so you could see the clothes at that time period. And in front of every one of these pictures, there was a podium. And on the podium was a book. And the book was everything about that person's lifetime. And the reason he showed me this was that on the other side, you could go to a castle. If you wanted to learn about medieval Europe, you could go to a castle, see what they lived in. You could see what it looked like. And you could also read about them in these books, read about their whole life. Well, right about then, I looked to my right, and there was a woman who was coming down the circular stairwell in the castle, and she had strawberry blonde hair like that of her shoulders, and she was wearing kind of a peach colored kind of a gown. And she could see me, and she walked up to me, and she said, "Is there anything I can help you find?" And Rebecca, I said the stupidest thing that I still kick myself to this day. I said to her, "No, thanks, I'm just looking." I could have asked her anything. Who are you? Where am I? I thought I was supposed to be having surgery. What's going on?
Now, hold on. Now, you said this the last time we talked, and you brought it in. You know, the stupidest thing. No, it was all in order. You weren't supposed to ask another question. You weren't supposed to inquire, because if you were, you would have.
Yeah, that's true.
The person, the ego, the mind is hold on to what's wrong. No, it wasn't time. It wasn't part of your destiny.
That's true.
So you're gonna have to switch up the story, or not. Keep going.
And my guide said to me that what she likes to do on the other side is she's kind of like a professor about that particular era of Earth's history. So if you're on the other side and you want to learn about medieval Europe, you could go to the castle, you could see their paintings, you could read their book, but you could also ask this girl anything about that particular era of Earth's history. And I thought that was so fascinating, because I know a lot of people like history and like to learn about it. So that was the castle. Now this is the end of my NDE. My guide took me to a meadow, and it was the most, I can't even describe to you how beautiful it was. It was a perfect day. The sun was shining, no wind at all, flowers and beautiful green grass everywhere, and rolling hills in the background. And then my guide left. And I thought I was there by myself. But the very next instant, a gentleman showed up in front of me, and I could see that he was wearing a white robe. I could see his hands. I could see his legs and his feet, and he was wearing gold-colored sandals that laced up his calves, and he was wearing a white robe with a golden sash. And I immediately knew that this was Jesus. And when I tried to look at his face, he was different than everybody else I saw there. He had so much light coming out of his face. It was like bolts of lightning, and I could not see his features. But he spoke to me, and he said, "You must tell them there is no death." And the very second he said that, like, boom, I was right back in my body in the hospital. And ever since he told me that, I tried to live my life in a way that I could share my story. Because he didn't say it like, "You know what, John, when you have time, would you mind sharing this story to people that you meet?" It wasn't like that. He said, "You must tell them there is no death." And so I've always felt like I was given this chore, this task, that I'm supposed to share my story. Because it wasn't about me. It was about my ability to share it. And that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So I am just thrilled every time someone like you asks me to be on their show. Because I love sharing my story. It takes me right back to that feeling. And I just love it. So thank you so much for having me on. And that was my whole NDE.
Well, thank you again for coming on twice. And the energy that you tell the story, it is just, there is no, this is what I feel, there is no trying to convince, it's just sharing what you experienced.
Exactly.
And there's nothing in a key to the message. There's nothing but open love, acceptance, it is uplifting, it is inspirational, and it, in my perspective, it is the truth. We are light. We're here to experience this challenge, this earth, but that's not our home. And
correct.
I really appreciate you sharing that. May I, let's see if there's anyone else that wants to, if you're on Noon Vibe, if you want to come up and ask a question, or you have a question. No, nobody's raising their hand. No? Well, again, I appreciate you. You know I do. Thank you again for doing this number 2, number 1.
So I'm so thankful. Thanks for having me back on. I love to share my story. And also, if any of your listeners have questions for me, they're more than welcome to reach out by email. And my email is johnjdavis65@icloud.com.
John J. Davis 65 at
iCloud.com.
iCloud.com. Perfect. Yep. What a great way to end the show. Thank you again, John. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Whew. Okay, audience, let's see. I'm going to do this, and that's the end of today's show. I want to say thank you for listening. Reality Spirituality is heard every Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Reality Spirituality. My first book, Reality Spirituality, The Truth About Happiness, is on Amazon. But the latest book, Program for Unhappiness. What? Program for Unhappiness. Exposing the Untold Truth. You can find it on Amazon. You know, I'm just not a marketer. Amazon and Lulu. And until next week, my dear audience, I want you to remember who you are. You've just been given an hour explanation of our true home, our real home. And John's here just to remind us, you are a physical extension of the universe, God, your conscious energy, having a human experience. You're always evolving, always changing, always growing. Love is patient, and love is kind. Be patient and be kind to yourself. Remember, you cannot have a happy ending to an unhappy journey. It is about the journey. You've been listening to Reality Spirituality Radio with yours truly, happiness specialist Rebecca L. Norrington, and that's just the name. Remember, happiness, contentment, and inner peace are all practice skills. Have a conscious week. Thank you for listening. Click here, click there.
Remember how you're supposed to put it down.
Oh, it's time to get real. Oh, yeah. It's a new experience. Spirituality. Yeah, keep your ears open for this one, man. Spirituality. You got a question for RLN? Spirituality. Yeah, it's time to get some answers, baby. Spirituality. Oh, now we getting real. Getting real. Spirituality. Yeah, it's time to get down. Yeah, you gonna feel good now. Real good. Now,